Now we want to shift into the corporate world, where the East Africa Breweries Limited's profits declined in the half ending December 2023 due to high interest costs and forex losses. The brewery recorded 16% growth in net sales in the same period. The group's volumes also increased by 2% due to resilient consumer demand as markets leveraged a strong and expanding portfolio.
We decline in profit of -22, mainly driven by high interest costs and forex losses. Now, cost of goods has gone up. I mean, we all know that costs have really escalated around our region, whether it's fuel, energy, and also cost of other inputs driven by either global inflation or where we have dollar or pound denominated inputs, then that is increasing our costs. And therefore we had a squeeze on margin, which went all the way down to profit. Our profit declined by -22, but mainly driven by high finance interest costs because the interest rates are quite high right now across the region and specifically in Kenya. And then forex hits. When we translate our results then to the bottom line, then the decline is -22.
All right. So the keyword that I'm getting being repeated over and over is, first of all, they're mentioning macros and that impacting on costs. Ken, EABL, the magnitude of this company, is reflective of where we are in one way or another. Yeah. Looking at this particular result, so they say profit after tax, 6.8 billion, but it's a 22% drop. Should that be a cause of concern?
Well, EABL is a significant player in the economy. It's more than 100 years. So it's one of the few companies that has been there for more than a century. And it's possibly one of the consumable products, produces one of the consumable products Kenyans use, if not every week, every weekend. So it is a significant player. But when you look at these numbers, it's not really a demand problem. Because every time you look at business numbers, you have to look, is it a demand problem or is it a cost issue? The demand still seems very stable. Kenyans are still partaking of the drinks, but the costs, and many companies are talking about forex losses because they import quite a bit. So I think companies need to start sharpening their outlooks on foreign exchange. Part of corporate strategy has to be able to say, what is our projection for exchange rates, for interest rates? And anybody back in 2 years ago, anybody who saw how inflation was going up would have told you that interest rates will go up and the dollar will rally and currencies will weaken. Any good analyst would have been able to tell you that. So the question is, why aren't companies taking advantage of these forecasts to be able to either to do some hedging? Hedging is when you see the currency seems to be weakening, let's get more dollars now so that we can run our operations. So it doesn't seem like there's enough foresight in corporate Kenya in terms of how, first, do you have access to good outlooks? But number one, number two, are you utilizing the outlooks to help you sharpen your strategy? So high interest rates, that could have been seen 2 years ago. Weakening dollar, weakening shilling, that would have been seen 2 years ago. So for me, there is still a problem in corporate Kenya about how they internalize much of these macroeconomic indicators and how they use it in their strategy. It doesn't seem to be quite very clear.
All right. Because you're saying it's always either the demand side or the costing issue. And with this particular situation, we've seen, especially when you look at year-on-year, profits before tax, EBITDA, all that, earnings before all that, compared now with the taxation element, and if at the top you are recording a slight positive increase. Then after the taxation element, you record maybe a drop, as we've seen here in their PAT, 22% drop. Prof, that brings in the issue of the taxation regime, yeah? In regards to how we tax these corporates and how it impacts on their profitability. I mean, for this particular one, EABL, I can see excise increases was one of the major issues that was affecting them, touching on the issue of glass, sugar, and some of these inputs still on the costing issue. As a government, and today I've placed you on the government, maybe I'm prophesying something here, yeah? Sooner or later, yeah, His Excellency, Professor Olwenyi, Head of State. I'll salute you, sir. But from a government perspective, especially for these big players who've been here for a very long time, is there a better way to handle this issue of taxation amidst all this?
True, Noah. You know, for EABL, it's a real loss even to the stock market. This is a listed company and a blue chip for that matter. When you see a profit of minus 22%, that is affecting the company and the stock market and the entire economy, as well put by Ken there. These are companies that you would want to progress. You'd want them to continue doing business. So as you are speaking there, the excise tax going up, that's what is making cost of their goods rising. These are some of the things that we may need to zero in, even from, if I was in government, that is, to look at it in terms of how can I enable manufacturing? How can I be able to give some incentives over a period? It has not been a very easy time for companies. The environment is harsh, even to the extent that even if you had forecasted it, you will actually still experience the harshness of the environment. So as a government, these are farms that we should actually endeavor to preserve and ensure that we give them some tax, tax credit, give them some tax cuts in a way so that we can be able to spur production. So there are two things that are mentioned there. One is the cost of things because of interest rates rising. So the cost of production, the cost of ensuring that they put their bottle ready for consumption is very heavy. So let's look at it in terms of how can we lower the taxation level so that we can be able to have a cheaper cost. And that also makes EABL, for example, competitive. I don't know who they are competing with because I don't take this. But then assume that they are competing with Castle or whatever, another, Ken, who do they compete with? then the competitors will actually be doing better than them because of the environment that is making them less competitive. Yes. Let's work on the tax, reduce it, ensure that cost of production is lower, and also work on our currency. No, we will keep on. We have been discussing the dollar issue, and it is still an issue. And we said when we were doing the projection for the year that it's still going to be an issue. Yes. Let's fix this dollar thing as a country. Okay. Yeah. So as a government, I will actually concentrate on how I can work on this dollar, because it's not only EABL. Major companies are actually affected by the forex losses. You just heard the other day Kenya Power and many more, Kenya Airways and many more. So forex issue is critical for our country. Definitely. So I will actually zero in on that if I am in that position you are talking about. Okay.
Hey, yes. That's incredible. Ken, I know you want to chime in. You've been blessed on blast. Like, what do you take? Me, I don't take anything. But you, what did you want to say?
No, if you were talking about, for example, a soap manufacturing company, then Prof's argument would make a lot of sense, where you say if you have excise taxes, it adds to the cost of the soap, and customers will look for cheaper alternatives because there are many substitutes. That argument can't be used by the likes of EABL because their products are fairly inelastic in demand. in the sense that even during tough economic times, today being a Friday, you'll still find along Mombasa Road, Thika Road, Kiambu Road, heavy consumption, because these products are considered almost inelastic demand, that almost at any price, customers will buy. So that argument of we can't pass this cost to the customer because they'll move away, as Prof correctly said, EABL has no real competitor in the market. So the products are almost, fairly the standard product.
Except
So for
the illicit consumers.
That's true. But your middle class person will not go for the illicit. So companies have to understand, are your products commodities that have many substitutes? Then you have to be very careful about the pricing. But if they're commodities, something like English Premier League products, for example, customers will pay for that because it's almost part of their DNA. They rather cut back on other parts of their lifestyle.
Yes.
So for me, that argument you have to ask, what is the kind of product you have and what is the cost implication? So I think that argument of high taxation would have been on companies that have many substitutes.
Yes.
But I think what we have with the EABL, a company of 100 years, that it's almost in every refrigerator around the country, almost people have a behavioral nature. With back in the days of mbili kama kawaida, you see. So I feel still there's a strategic flaw happening there. Yes, we'll blame the economy, but there is a strategic flaw that's taking place there.
Yeah, and the codependence even within the manufacturing sector, thinking of ethanol as a component of manufacturing, which again, when you look at the costing elements, it's causing quite an issue. Yeah, we have to import. Now, the question of, again, the dollar, all that. And initially that used to be serviced by local, sugar manufacturers. Now, when one industry fails to work, especially within the confines of a country, then you see also the ripple effect of that. Prof, how do we become more intentional in regards to codependency, but also from a costing perspective, where we can say we can rely on ourselves within to keep costs at bay within the manufacturing sector?
I think every organization that is manufacturing should actually consider that. And I think for EABL, for some time, they had started some sorghum plant. I don't know whether it's working. It was supposed to be around Kisumu and the regions around there. I don't know whether it's working, but that is a right way to go. Thinking in terms of producing your material or what you're using locally, if it can be produced. Then next is the issue of sugar. Although, as a company, EABL cannot deal with the sugar issue in Kenya. But then as a nation, we need to fix the sugar issue, for example, so that we don't actually import those, plus many other things that we are using. So generally, any company that is actually manufacturing ought to do some forecasting of the material. Where do I source my materials from? If you source it within the country, you will be better off.
Yes.
But if you source it outside, then you will always be affected by the currency volatility. As the currency keeps on being volatile, you are affected negatively.
Yes.
So I think it's ordinarily the business of the manufacturing firm, just like Kenneth put it earlier. When we are doing these things, the strategy, crafting the strategy for organizations, the manufacturing firm ought to look at where are we sourcing our products so that we can actually get it from the local and take advantage of that. Even sometimes, get a particular region that is actually productive or good, if it is an agricultural-based manufacturing organization like EABL, that is good, and do put some capital there and ensure that you get your raw material.
All right, definitely. Yeah. Very important. Ken, briefly touch on that, and also as you touch on the issue of fuel and cost of electricity, also that Fuel went up 39%, electricity 16% up, and you balance that up with the issue of the consumer. As much as you've talked about the elastic or inelastic nature of this particular product, we are seeing that actually consumers are spending less on fast-moving consumer products. FMGCs dropping almost close to 22%. So people are a little bit keen in that regard. 40% of all purchases are on discount. So we are seeing the consumer becoming more careful. Touch on that costing element and also on the consumer element as we close.
You're absolutely right. Fuel going up 39% obviously adds to the cost of doing business. But the strategic question that every company must ask is, what percentage of these increments can we pass to the consumer and how much can we absorb as a company? And that ratio varies depending on the elasticity of demand in the market. And you're right, there are some segments in which inflation has eroded the purchasing power. But brands like this should also be able to have multiple tiers of products and target the levels that are not as exposed, and be able to reprice. So you look at your portfolio and see this type of economy, it seems to be inflation has eroded, but these segments seem to be thriving. Can we retilt the distribution towards those segments and be able to meet? So there is that strategic approach that is very, very necessary in terms of rebalancing your portfolio depending on where the market is.
Definitely. Very, very important. Gentlemen, what a discussion. You know, sometimes you just wait for the discussion to end. Then after you finish, you now ask each other, what form ni gani? You know, that's how young people talk. What is the form in English, yeah? But gentlemen, what a pleasure to have you on BizChat today. Thank you for making time. Briefly, very briefly, Prof, what have you learned this week that you didn't know last week? Something unique, briefly.
That I didn't know last week. What is it? Maybe the way that it's more of AI technology. You know, as we belong to the other generation, and just learning that AI can give you some information that I learned that it can do much more than I expected. Many things that than I expected that it could do.
I see that. That's where you got that snail idea. I'm kidding. No. It's all right. Ken, how about you? What didn't you know last week that you knew this week? Right?
Well, I've been doing a bit of research on Mozambique, the city of Beira, the port of Beira, and obviously Maputo. It's a very fascinating country. You know, you have the Anglophone Africa and Francophone, but very few people know about the Lusophone, the Portuguese-speaking countries like Mozambique. So extremely fascinating, extremely historic, that country, and yeah, it's something that I'll be telling you more.
Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Mozambique, Ken Gishinga. And all the way from the land of AI, Dr. Tobias Olweni. They've met on Friday. Thank you very much for being part of BizChat. Thank you very much for joining with Business Today as a product from Monday all the way to today. I'm very sure that you're going to enjoy your weekend because you seem like a fun person. Thank you very much. My name is Nokip Kimbo. Enjoy your weekend. Up next, we have Miriam KTN. Stay tuned. We are heading to Mozambique.
Can take us to Mozambique.